In the heart of a bustling city filled with towering skyscrapers and endless streams of people rushing to their destinations, there stood an iconic restaurant named the Gilded Fork. It was known for its elegant ambiance, exquisite dishes, and high prices that only a select few could afford. The restaurant had once been the talk of the town, frequented by celebrities, business tycoons, and socialites. But over time, its shine began to fade. Rising competition, changing tastes, and mismanagement had left it struggling to stay relevant. This particular day, Sarah Thompson stepped out of a taxi in front of the Gilded Fork. She wasn't dressed like most of the patrons who visited this place. Instead of designer dresses or tailored suits, she wore a simple blouse and jeans. Her shoes were worn from years of walking long distances, and her handbag looked more practical than fashionable. To anyone passing by, she might have seemed out of place among the polished exteriors and luxury cars parked outside the restaurant. But appearances can be deceiving. What no one knew, not even the staff inside, was that Sarah had just become the new owner of the Gilded Fork. After years of saving money from working multiple jobs, investing wisely, and learning every aspect of the restaurant industry, she finally had enough to buy the establishment. For Sarah, this wasn't just a business deal, it was a dream come true. Growing up in a small town where her family ran a modest diner, she had always admired fine dining but resented how exclusive it often felt. Her vision for the Gilded Fork was clear: to create a space where everyone, regardless of their background, could feel welcome while enjoying world-class food. As Sarah entered the restaurant, she took a deep breath, savoring the familiar scent of fresh herbs and spices wafting through the air. The interior was breathtaking, a blend of modern design and classic charm. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting soft light onto pristine white tablecloths. Servers moved gracefully between tables, attending to guests with practiced precision. Despite its current struggles, the restaurant still exuded a sense of grandeur. However, not everyone shared Sarah's appreciation for the finer details. Across the room, Gregory Langley, the restaurant's manager, stood near the hostess desk, scanning the crowd with a critical eye. Gregory prided himself on maintaining what he called the essence of exclusivity. In his mind, the Gilded Fork wasn't just a place to eat, it was an experience reserved for those who understood refinement. He believed that part of his job was ensuring only the right kind of people walked through the doors. When Gregory spotted Sarah standing near the entrance, his lips curled into a sneer. To him, her plain clothes and unassuming demeanor screamed out of place. Without hesitation, he strode toward her, his polished shoes clicking against the marble floor. "May I help you?" he asked, his tone dripping with condescension. His words weren't meant to assist. They were designed to intimidate. Sarah turned to face him, meeting his gaze with calm eyes. "Hello," she said warmly. "I'd like to see the menu, please." Gregory raised an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed. "Are you aware of our pricing here? This isn't exactly affordable dining." His comment stung, though Sarah didn't let it show. She had faced similar judgments throughout her life, from classmates who mocked her second-hand clothes to colleagues who underestimated her abilities because of her humble beginnings. But instead of reacting defensively, she simply smiled. "Thank you for letting me know," she replied politely. "I'll take a look at the menu anyway." Unsatisfied with her response, Gregory pressed on. "You understand, we cater to a very specific clientele, people who appreciate the finer things in life. Perhaps somewhere else would suit your needs better?" Sarah's patience was remarkable. Rather than arguing or showing anger, she nodded thoughtfully. "You're right," she said softly. "First impressions matter, and sometimes they can surprise us." Gregory blinked, momentarily thrown off by her composure. Still, he couldn't fathom that someone like her could pose any real challenge to his authority, or to the restaurant itself. With a dismissive wave of his hand, he signaled for a nearby server to escort her out. "Enjoy your evening," he said curtly before turning away, already forgetting about the encounter. What Gregory failed to realize was that Sarah wasn't just another customer. She had spent months researching the Gilded Fork, studying its history, analyzing its strengths and weaknesses. She knew exactly why the restaurant was struggling, and she had a plan to turn it around. As she stepped back onto the sidewalk, she glanced up at the gleaming sign above the door. A small smile played on her lips. Little did Gregory know, his days of ruling the restaurant with arrogance were numbered. For now, Sarah decided to bide her time. She wanted to observe the inner workings of the restaurant firsthand before making her presence known. She returned home that night, reviewing the documents she had signed earlier that day. Each page represented not just a financial investment, but also a deeply personal commitment to proving that success doesn't depend on wealth or appearances. As she drifted off to sleep, Sarah imagined the future of the Gilded Fork. Gone would be the days of exclusion and pretentiousness. In their place would rise a welcoming atmosphere where passion, hard work, and kindness reigned supreme. And when the time came to reveal her identity as the owner, she knew Gregory, and everyone else, would never forget the lesson she was about to teach them. The next morning, Sarah arrived at the Gilded Fork again, this time dressed in a slightly more polished outfit, a navy blue blazer over her blouse and a pair of comfortable yet stylish shoes. She had decided to spend the day observing the restaurant's operations from the perspective of both its staff and its customers. Her goal was simple, to understand what worked well and what needed improvement. But she also knew that blending into the environment would be tricky, especially with Gregory around. As she entered through the grand double doors, she noticed that the early lunch crowd was beginning to trickle in. Businessmen in sharp suits sipped espresso while reviewing documents, and a few older couples chatted quietly over glasses of wine. The atmosphere was refined, but there was something missing. An energy, a warmth that could make the space feel truly inviting. Sarah made a mental note of this as she took a seat at a corner table, positioning herself where she could observe without drawing too much attention. It wasn't long before Gregory appeared, clipboard in hand, his demeanor as commanding as ever. He moved between tables with brisk efficiency, scrutinizing every detail, the placement of silverware, the posture of servers, the expressions of guests. To anyone watching, he seemed like the epitome of professionalism. Yet beneath the surface, his interactions revealed a stark lack of empathy. When a server accidentally spilled water on a guest's napkin, Gregory didn't offer support or guidance. Instead, he snapped at the young man, berating him loudly enough for nearby diners to hear. "Do you even know how to do your job?" he hissed, his voice dripping with disdain. The server flushed red, stammering an apology before rushing off to fetch a replacement. Sarah watched the scene unfold with a mix of frustration and sadness. She had seen managers like Gregory before, people who believed leadership meant asserting dominance rather than fostering growth. It was clear that his behavior created a toxic work environment, one where employees felt undervalued and afraid to take initiative. How could anyone thrive under such conditions? More importantly, how could a restaurant succeed when its staff was constantly walking on eggshells? Determined to gather more insight, Sarah flagged down a different server, a young woman named Mia, who approached her table with a tentative smile. "Good afternoon," Mia said, placing a menu in front of Sarah. "Would you like to start with something to drink?" "Yes, thank you," Sarah replied warmly. "I'll have a glass of sparkling water, please." As Mia jotted down the order, Sarah asked casually, "How long have you worked here?" Mia hesitated, glancing toward Gregory, who was now inspecting the dessert display case with a critical eye. "About 6 months," she admitted. "It's challenging sometimes." "Oh? Why is that?" Sarah probed gently, sensing the hesitation in Mia's voice. "Well," Mia lowered her voice, leaning in slightly, "Gregory can be really tough. If anything goes wrong, even if it's not our fault, he blames us, and he doesn't like it when we try new things or suggest improvements. He says we're just supposed to follow orders." Sarah nodded sympathetically. "That must be frustrating. Do you enjoy working here otherwise?" Mia shrugged. "Some days are okay. I love cooking and serving food. It makes me happy to see people enjoy it." But lately, it feels like no matter how hard we work, it's never good enough. A lot of my coworkers are thinking about leaving. Before Sarah could respond, Gregory's sharp voice cut through the air. Mia, stop chatting and get back to work. His tone left no room for argument. With an apologetic glance, Mia hurried away, leaving Sarah alone with her thoughts. Over the course of the afternoon, Sarah continued to observe. She noticed how Gregory treated each interaction as a test of authority, rarely offering praise or encouragement. Even when a customer complimented the service, Gregory dismissed it with a curt nod as though compliments were irrelevant. Meanwhile, the staff tiptoed around him, their movements tense and hesitant. The tension in the air was palpable, affecting not only morale but also the overall dining experience. Guests picked up on the unease, and while some tolerated it, others grew visibly uncomfortable. By late afternoon, Sarah decided to push her observation further. She approached the hostess stand, pretending to inquire about reservations. "Hi," she said brightly to the young woman stationed there. "I'm interested in booking a private event here. Can you tell me more about the options?" The hostess smiled politely but seemed distracted. "Of course," she began, flipping open a binder. However, before she could elaborate, Gregory swooped in, his expression suspicious. "Who is this?" he demanded, looking directly at Sarah. "I'm just gathering information," Sarah replied smoothly, unfazed by his abruptness. "I've heard great things about the Gilded Fork, and I wanted to learn more about hosting events here." Gregory studied her for a moment, clearly skeptical. "We don't typically cater to casual inquiries," he said dismissively. "If you're serious, you'll need to contact corporate." Sarah raised an eyebrow, intrigued by his reaction. "Corporate? Isn't that handled here?" "Not anymore," Gregory snapped. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have actual business to attend to." With that, he turned on his heel and strode away, leaving Sarah standing there. Though outwardly calm, Sarah couldn't help but feel a surge of irritation. Gregory's arrogance wasn't just annoying, it was damaging. By alienating potential clients and demoralizing his team, he was actively contributing to the restaurant's decline. But instead of confronting him directly, Sarah chose to remain patient. There would be a time and place for accountability, and she intended to handle it thoughtfully. Later that evening, as the dinner rush began, Sarah returned to her corner table, ordering a light meal to blend in with the other patrons. She observed how Gregory's presence loomed over everything, stifling creativity and collaboration. Servers whispered nervously to each other, afraid of making mistakes. Cooks in the kitchen exchanged frustrated glances whenever a dish was sent back due to minor issues. The entire operation felt mechanical, devoid of passion or personality. Yet amidst the negativity, Sarah spotted glimmers of hope. Mia, despite her earlier encounter with Gregory, went out of her way to ensure every guest at her tables felt cared for. Another server, a middle-aged man named Carlos, offered heartfelt recommendations based on his own experiences with the menu. Even the sous chef, visible through the pass window, worked with quiet determination, plating dishes with precision and care. These individuals reminded Sarah why she had fallen in love with the restaurant industry in the first place. They embodied resilience, dedication, and a genuine desire to create memorable experiences. As Sarah finished her meal and prepared to leave, she paused near the entrance, taking one last look at the restaurant. Despite its flaws, the Gilded Fork still held immense potential. With the right leadership and vision, it could once again become a shining example of excellence, not because of exclusivity, but because of inclusivity. And Sarah was ready to lead that transformation. Little did Gregory realize that the unassuming woman he had ridiculed twice in 2 days was about to change everything. For Sarah, the challenge ahead wasn't just about turning the restaurant around. It was about proving that true success came from lifting others up, not tearing them down. The following morning, Sarah arrived at the Gilded Fork with a sense of purpose. She had spent the previous night carefully outlining her plans for the restaurant, envisioning every detail from menu updates to staff training programs. But before she could implement any changes, there was one crucial step she needed to complete: finalizing the ownership transfer with Mr. Whitaker, the outgoing owner. Mr. Whitaker, a kind-hearted man in his late 60s, greeted Sarah warmly when she entered his office located on the second floor of the building. The room was modestly furnished with shelves lined with decades-old cookbooks and framed photographs of the restaurant during its glory days. It was clear that Mr. Whitaker had poured his heart into the Gilded Fork, and the weight of letting go wasn't lost on him. "Sarah," he said, extending a hand as she sat down across from him, "are you ready to take the reins?" "I've been ready for years," Sarah replied with a smile, her voice steady despite the excitement bubbling inside her. "This place means so much to me, not just because of its history, but because of what it can become." Mr. Whitaker nodded approvingly. "You remind me of myself when I first started, passionate, determined, and unafraid to dream big." He paused, his expression turning serious. "But let me be honest with you. Running a restaurant like this isn't easy, especially not now when the industry is changing so fast. You'll face challenges, and some people won't understand your vision right away." "I know," Sarah said firmly, "and I'm prepared for that. Change doesn't happen overnight. But if we focus on creating something authentic, something that brings people together, I believe we can make the Gilded Fork shine again." With those words, they proceeded to sign the final documents, officially transferring ownership to Sarah. As she held the pen, signing her name with deliberate strokes, a wave of emotions washed over her. This moment marked the culmination of years of hard work, sacrifice, and unwavering determination. For the first time in her life, she truly felt like she belonged exactly where she was meant to be. After completing the paperwork, Mr. Whitaker offered Sarah some advice. "Take care of your team," he said earnestly. "They're the backbone of this place. Without them, no amount of fancy decor or expensive ingredients will matter. And remember, leadership isn't about being in charge. It's about serving others." Sarah thanked him sincerely, promising to honor his legacy while forging a new path forward. As they shook hands one last time, Mr. Whitaker added with a twinkle in his eye, "Oh, and good luck with Gregory. Well, let's just say he has strong opinions." Sarah chuckled softly, already aware of Gregory's domineering personality. "Don't worry," she assured him. "I have a plan." Later that afternoon, Sarah returned to the main dining area, eager to begin implementing subtle changes. She decided against revealing her identity immediately, choosing instead to observe and interact with the staff incognito. Her goal was to gain first-hand insight into their daily struggles and strengths, ensuring that her decisions would reflect their needs as much as her own vision. Her first move was to visit the kitchen, where she found the head chef, Chef Elena Martinez, overseeing preparations for the evening service. Elena was a tall, commanding figure with sharp eyes and an air of quiet authority. Despite the chaos surrounding her, she moved with precision, tasting sauces, adjusting plating, and offering guidance to her team. "Excuse me," Sarah said, approaching cautiously. "I hope I'm not interrupting." Elena glanced up, wiping her hands on a towel. "Can I help you?" she asked, her tone professional but guarded. "I was hoping to learn more about how things run here," Sarah explained. "I'm particularly interested in the menu, what works, what doesn't, and what might excite customers." Elena raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued by the question. Most patrons never ventured beyond the dining room, let alone showed curiosity about the inner workings of the kitchen. "Well," she began, relaxing slightly, "our classic dishes are popular, but they're also predictable. We stick to tradition too much, which can feel stale after a while." Sarah nodded thoughtfully. "What if we introduced seasonal specials? Something fresh and unexpected that showcases local ingredients?" "That's a great idea," Elena admitted, a spark of enthusiasm lighting up her face. "But convincing management to try new things hasn't been easy. They prefer playing it safe." "I see," Sarah murmured, making a mental note. "Thank you for sharing your thoughts. I'll keep that in mind." As the day wore on, Sarah continued engaging with various members of the staff, asking thoughtful questions and listening intently to their responses. She spoke with Carlos, the experienced server who had impressed her earlier, about ways to improve customer service. She chatted with Mia, learning about the challenges of working under Gregory's strict supervision. Each conversation deepened her understanding of the restaurant's dynamics and reaffirmed her belief that change was necessary, but it had to come from within. Meanwhile, Gregory remained oblivious to Sarah's presence behind the scenes. That evening, as the dinner rush picked up, he prowled through the dining room, criticizing everything from table settings to wine pairings. When a guest requested a substitution for a dish due to dietary restrictions, Gregory rolled his eyes dramatically. "Why do people always insist on complicating things?" he muttered to a nearby server. "Tell them we don't customize orders." Sarah overheard the exchange and felt a pang of frustration. Customization wasn't inconvenient. It was an opportunity to build rapport with customers and demonstrate flexibility. Yet Gregory's rigid mindset prevented him from seeing that. Instead of intervening directly, however, Sarah chose to address the issue later, focusing on empowering the staff to handle similar situations independently. By the end of the night, exhaustion settled over the restaurant. Servers collapsed onto chairs in the break room, discussing the highs and lows of the shift. In the kitchen, chefs cleaned grills and prepped for tomorrow, their movements slower than usual. Sarah lingered quietly, observing the camaraderie that still existed despite the challenges. These moments reminded her why she loved the hospitality industry, the shared passion for creating memorable experiences, even in difficult circumstances. Before leaving, Sarah took a moment to reflect on the day's events. She had seen glimpses of brilliance amid the dysfunction, proof that the Gilded Fork could rise again. But she also knew that addressing the root causes of the problems, starting with Gregory's toxic leadership, would require careful planning and timing. As she stepped out into the cool night air, Sarah felt a renewed sense of determination. Tomorrow would bring new opportunities to connect with the team and lay the groundwork for transformation. And when the time came to reveal herself as the owner, she vowed to do so in a way that inspired trust, respect, and hope for everyone, except Gregory, whose arrogance had gone unchecked for far too long. The next morning, Sarah arrived at the Gilded Fork earlier than usual. She had spent the previous night finalizing her plans, knowing that today would mark a turning point, not just for the restaurant, but for everyone who worked there. Though she still hadn't revealed her identity as the new owner, she was ready to start making subtle changes that would ripple through the establishment. Her first stop was the kitchen, where Chef Elena Martinez was already hard at work preparing for breakfast service. The aroma of freshly baked bread and sizzling bacon filled the air, creating an inviting atmosphere despite the early hour. Sarah approached Elena with a warm smile. "Good morning," she said cheerfully. "Mind if I join you for a bit?" Elena glanced up, surprised but not unwelcoming. "Sure," she replied, gesturing toward a nearby stool. "What brings you here so early?" "I wanted to see how things operate during the quieter hours," Sarah explained. "It's easier to notice details when it's less chaotic." Elena nodded in agreement. "Makes sense. Breakfast is our slowest meal, but it's also a chance to experiment without too much pressure. Speaking of which," she paused, lowering her voice slightly, "have you thought about introducing brunch specials? Something casual yet elevated, like avocado toast with poached eggs or pancakes with seasonal fruit compote?" Sarah's eyes lit up. "That's brilliant," she said enthusiastically. "Let's make it happen. Start small, maybe 1 or 2 dishes to test the waters. If they're popular, we can expand." Elena grinned, clearly pleased by Sarah's enthusiasm. "I'll get started on some recipes today. Thanks for listening. It's refreshing to have someone actually care about what we do back here." As the morning progressed, Sarah moved through the restaurant, observing the staff as they prepared for the day. She noticed Mia struggling to carry a heavy tray of glasses from the storage area to the bar. Without hesitation, Sarah stepped in to help. "Here, let me take half of that," she offered, balancing the load effortlessly. Mia looked startled but grateful. "Thank you," she said softly. "Gregory gets mad if we ask for help, so I usually try to do everything myself." Sarah frowned, her jaw tightening momentarily. You shouldn't have to deal with that, she said firmly. No one should. Keep doing your best and don't worry, things are going to change around here. Mia blinked, unsure how to respond, but she nodded slowly, a flicker of hope crossing her face. By mid-morning, the restaurant began filling up with customers. Sarah positioned herself near the hostess stand, watching as Gregory greeted guests, with forced politeness while simultaneously berating servers under his breath. His behavior was becoming increasingly unbearable, and Sarah knew it was only a matter of time before his actions crossed a line that couldn't be ignored. That moment came sooner than expected. During lunch service, a young server named Jake accidentally dropped a plate of soup near a table occupied by a prominent food critic. The spill was minor, barely noticeable, but Gregory erupted into a tirade loud enough for the entire dining room to hear. "How many times do I have to tell you to be careful?" he barked, pointing accusingly at Jake. "This is why we can't have nice things. Clean it up and get out of my sight." Jake turned pale, visibly shaken as he scrambled to mop up the mess. The critic raised an eyebrow, jotting something down in his notebook, while other diners exchanged uncomfortable glances. The tension in the room was palpable. Sarah had seen enough. Stepping forward, she addressed Gregory calmly but firmly. "That's enough," she said, her voice cutting through the awkward silence. "There's no need to humiliate him in front of everyone." Gregory spun around, his expression incredulous. "Who are you to tell me how to run my restaurant?" he demanded, his tone laced with disdain. Before Sarah could respond, Mia interjected nervously. "Mr. Langley, she's the new owner," Sarah interrupted, her gaze steady as she locked eyes with Gregory. The room fell silent, all eyes turning toward her. For a brief moment, Gregory looked as though he'd been slapped. Then anger took over. "What nonsense is this?" he spat, glaring at Sarah. "You, the owner? Impossible." "It's true," Sarah confirmed, pulling out a copy of the ownership documents from her bag. "I bought the Gilded Fork last week, and after witnessing your behavior firsthand, I've decided that your services are no longer required." Gregory's coy face flushed red with rage. "You can't fire me. I've been managing this place for years. You've also been driving away customers and demoralizing your team," Sarah countered sharply. "Your attitude has no place here. Effective immediately, you're relieved of your duties." For a moment, Gregory seemed frozen, unable to process what was happening. Then, muttering curses under his breath, he stormed off, slamming the door behind him. The staff stared in stunned silence, unsure whether to celebrate or panic. Once Gregory was gone, Sarah turned to address the team. "Everyone, please gather around," she called out, her voice calm but authoritative. As the staff formed a circle, she continued, "First, let me introduce myself properly. My name is Sarah Thompson, and I'm the new owner of the Gilded Fork. I know many of you may feel uncertain right now, but I want you to know that I believe in this restaurant, and in each of you." She paused, letting her words sink in. Gregory's leadership style wasn't working, for the business or for any of you. Moving forward, I want us to focus on collaboration, creativity, and kindness. Mistakes will happen, that's part of life. But instead of punishing them, we'll learn from them together. Does that sound fair? A murmur of agreement rippled through the group. Carlos raised his hand hesitantly. "What happens now?" he asked. "Will there be layoffs?" "No," Sarah assured him. "In fact, I plan to hire additional staff to ease the workload. But more importantly, I want to invest in training programs to help everyone grow professionally. This isn't just a job, it's a career. And I'm committed to supporting you every step of the way." The relief in the room was palpable. Mia wiped away tears, whispering a quiet, "Thank you," while Elena gave Sarah a thumbs up from across the room. Even the sous chef, who had remained stoic throughout the confrontation, cracked a rare smile. Later that evening, Sarah stayed late to review operations with the remaining managers. Together, they discussed immediate improvements, such as updating the menu, enhancing customer service protocols, and streamlining communication between departments. By the end of the meeting, Sarah felt confident that the foundation for change was in place. As she left the restaurant, she reflected on the day's events. Firing Gregory had been a necessary step, but it was only the beginning. Rebuilding trust within the team and restoring the Gilded Fork's reputation would take time and effort. Yet Sarah was undeterred. Every challenge presented an opportunity to prove that success wasn't defined by exclusivity or arrogance. It was built on inclusivity, empathy, and a shared commitment to excellence. And as she walked into the night, the weight of responsibility settled comfortably on her shoulders. She knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but she also knew she wasn't alone. With a dedicated team by her side, anything was possible. In the weeks following Gregory's dismissal, the Gilded Fork underwent a transformation that was both subtle and profound. Sarah wasted no time putting her vision into action, starting with empowering the staff to take ownership of their roles. She introduced daily team meetings where everyone, from servers to chefs, was encouraged to share ideas and voice concerns. For many employees, this was a novel concept. Under Gregory's reign, speaking up had often led to ridicule or punishment. But Sarah made it clear that their input mattered. One of the first changes came from Chef Elena, who proposed adding a chef's special section to the menu. These dishes would rotate weekly, allowing the culinary team to showcase their creativity while incorporating seasonal ingredients. The idea was met with enthusiasm, not just by the kitchen staff, but also by customers who loved the element of surprise. Elena's confidence soared as she saw her creations being celebrated, and soon other chefs began contributing their own innovative recipes. Mia, too, found herself stepping into a leadership role. Recognizing her natural ability to connect with guests, Sarah promoted her to head server, a decision that thrilled Mia, but initially intimidated her. "Are you sure I'm ready for this?" Mia asked nervously during their one-on-one meeting. "You're more than ready," Sarah assured her. "You've been doing the work of a leader for months. You just needed someone to believe in you. Trust me, Mia. People gravitate toward kindness and authenticity. Those are qualities every great leader should have." Under Mia's guidance, the front-of-house staff adopted a new approach to customer service. They focused on creating personalized experiences, remembering regular patrons' preferences, and going above and beyond to accommodate special requests. This shift didn't go unnoticed. Online reviews praised the warm, welcoming atmosphere, and reservations began picking up pace. Meanwhile, Sarah worked tirelessly behind the scenes to ensure the restaurant ran smoothly. She collaborated with local farmers and suppliers to source fresh, sustainable ingredients, emphasizing transparency in the dining experience. She also launched a community initiative called Taste of Togetherness, inviting families from nearby neighborhoods to enjoy discounted meals on designated nights. These events drew diverse crowds, breaking down barriers between the restaurant and its surroundings. As the staff grew more confident, so did the business. Revenue increased steadily, and morale reached an all-time high. Yet Sarah remained grounded, reminding everyone that success wasn't measured solely by profit. It was about fostering connections and making a positive impact. Gregory, however, was faring less well. After his abrupt departure from the Gilded Fork, he struggled to find another managerial position. His glowing resume, once a ticket to prestigious opportunities, now seemed tainted by whispered rumors of his abrasive demeanor. Potential employers hesitated after contacting former colleagues, many of whom sang Sarah's praises while subtly hinting at Gregory's shortcomings. Desperate for income, Gregory eventually accepted a job as a delivery driver for a chain restaurant. It was a humbling role, miles away from the polished world he had once commanded. At first, he resented every order he delivered, grumbling about ungrateful customers and long hours. But over time, something unexpected happened. He started noticing the humanity in the interactions. One evening, as he handed a bag of food to a young mother juggling 2 toddlers, she smiled wearily and thanked him. "We couldn't have made it through today without this," she said sincerely. Another customer, an elderly man living alone, struck up a conversation about his love for cooking and shared stories of meals he used to prepare for his late wife. Slowly but surely, these small moments began chipping away at Gregory's hardened exterior. He also couldn't escape the irony of his situation. Everywhere he went, people talked about the Gilded Fork, how it had transformed under new management, how kind and attentive the staff were, how inclusive the atmosphere felt. Each mention stung, forcing him to confront the truth about his past behavior. He realized that his obsession with exclusivity hadn't elevated the restaurant. It had alienated it. And though pride still lingered, cracks began forming in his armor, letting humility seep through. Back at the Gilded Fork, preparations were underway for a grand reopening event to celebrate the restaurant's resurgence. Sarah spared no expense, transforming the space into a dazzling tribute to its storied history while embracing modern touches. Twinkling fairy lights adorned the ceiling, casting a soft glow over tables adorned with fresh flowers. A live jazz band played sultry melodies, filling the air with warmth and nostalgia. On the night of the event, the restaurant buzzed with excitement. Local influencers, food critics, and loyal patrons mingled freely, sampling dishes crafted specifically for the occasion. Servers moved gracefully through the crowd, offering hors d'oeuvres and refilling glasses with practiced ease. Even Chef Elena stepped out of the kitchen briefly to greet guests, beaming with pride as compliments poured in. Sarah stood near the entrance, greeting arrivals with a radiant smile. She had spent countless hours planning every detail, and seeing her vision come to life filled her with immense satisfaction. As the evening wore on, she took a moment to step outside for some fresh air, savoring the cool breeze and reflecting on how far they'd come. It was then that Gregory appeared, not as a guest, but as a delivery driver carrying boxes of supplies, ordered last minute for the event. His uniform was crisp, his posture rigid, but there was a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes as he approached Sarah. "Delivery for the Gilded Fork," he said stiffly, avoiding her gaze. Sarah recognized him, immediately her expression softening. "Thank you," she replied warmly. "Let me sign for that." For a moment neither spoke. Then Gregory hesitated, his voice barely audible. I heard about the changes here. Sounds like things are going well." "They are," Sarah confirmed, nodding. "We've worked hard to create something special, a place where everyone feels welcome." Gregory swallowed hard, clearly uncomfortable. "Look, I know I messed up, I was arrogant, and I treated people poorly. I guess I thought being tough meant being respected, but—" He trailed off, shaking his head. "Anyway, congratulations. You've done what I never could." Sarah studied him for a moment, noting the sincerity in his words. "Everyone makes mistakes, Gregory," she said gently. "What matters is learning from them. I hope you'll carry this experience forward. It's never too late to grow." To her surprise, Gregory managed a faint smile. "Thanks," he murmured, "for everything." As he walked away, Sarah watched him disappear into the night, feeling a pang of empathy. Redemption wasn't easy, but it was possible, and she hoped Gregory would find his way back to a better version of himself. By the end of the evening, the Gilded Fork had cemented its status as a beacon of inclusivity and excellence. Critics raved about the revitalized menu, while social media lit up with photos of happy diners and glowing reviews. For Sarah, the success wasn't just personal. It was proof that kindness, collaboration, and authenticity could triumph over arrogance and exclusion. As she closed the restaurant that night, Sarah paused in the empty dining room, taking it all. The journey had been challenging, but every obstacle had brought her closer to realizing her dream. And though challenges lay ahead, she faced them with unwavering optimism, knowing that true success was built not on power or prestige, but on the strength of a united team and a shared purpose. The weeks following the grand reopening of the Gilded Fork marked a new chapter not only for the restaurant but also for everyone involved in its transformation. Sarah's vision had come to life, and the ripple effects of her leadership were felt far beyond the dining room. The restaurant was no longer just a place where people ate. It had become a hub of connection, creativity, and community. Every day brought fresh energy to the staff. Mia, now head server, thrived in her role, mentoring newer employees and fostering a culture of teamwork. She introduced team bonding nights, where the staff gathered after closing hours to share meals and stories. These gatherings helped break down barriers between departments, creating friendships that translated into seamless collaboration during service. Carlos, who had once kept mostly to himself, became known for his quick wit and ability to diffuse tense situations with humor. Even Chef Elena, whose stern exterior had intimidated many at first, softened as she saw how much her team valued her guidance. Together, they worked like a well-oiled machine, each member contributing their unique strengths. Sarah continued to innovate, always seeking ways to make the restaurant more inclusive and sustainable. She partnered with local charities to host fundraising dinners, donating a portion of proceeds to organizations supporting food insecurity and education. She also implemented eco-friendly practices, such as reducing plastic waste and composting food scraps. These initiatives resonated deeply with customers, earning the Gilded Fork recognition as a leader in ethical hospitality. As word spread about the restaurant's revival, media outlets began featuring Sarah's story. Interviews highlighted her humble beginnings and relentless determination, painting her as an inspiration to aspiring entrepreneurs everywhere. Food bloggers praised her ability to blend tradition with modernity, while business analysts lauded her focus on employee empowerment and customer satisfaction. Yet despite the growing acclaim, Sarah remained humble, deflecting praise onto her team. "This isn't my success, it's ours," she often said during interviews. Without them, none of this would be possible. Gregory, meanwhile, continued, working as a delivery driver, though his perspective had shifted dramatically. Delivering meals forced him to interact with people from all walks of life, exposing him to stories and struggles he had never considered before. One particularly memorable encounter occurred when he delivered dinner to a young couple celebrating their anniversary in a tiny apartment. Despite limited means, they radiated joy, sharing laughter and heartfelt memories over takeout containers. Gregory found himself lingering longer than necessary, struck by their gratitude, not just for the meal but for the simple act of being acknowledged. These moments chipped away at his old mindset, teaching him lessons about humility and humanity that years of managerial experience had failed to impart. He started volunteering at a community kitchen on weekends, helping prepare meals for those in need. Though the work was physically demanding, it filled him with a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. For the first time, he understood that true fulfillment came not from wielding authority, but from serving others. Eventually, Gregory mustered the courage to reach out to Sarah. He sent her a brief email thanking her for the grace she had shown him during their last meeting. To his surprise, she responded warmly, inviting him to visit the Gilded Fork whenever he wanted. "There's always room for growth," she wrote, "and I believe in second chances." When Gregory finally returned to the restaurant months later, he barely recognized the place. Gone was the cold, pretentious atmosphere he had cultivated. In its stead stood a vibrant, welcoming space buzzing with warmth and laughter. Servers greeted guests with genuine smiles, and chefs proudly explained the origins of ingredients used in each dish. As he wandered through the dining room, several former colleagues approached him, their initial awkwardness melting into friendly conversation. Even Mia hugged him tightly, telling him how much she missed his organizational skills, though she jokingly added that she didn't miss his temper. Inspired by what he saw, Gregory decided to enroll in a hospitality management course, determined to rebuild his career the right way. He reached out to Sarah again, asking if she might consider offering him an internship at the Gilded Fork. Though skeptical at first, Sarah agreed, believing in the power of redemption. Under Mia's supervision, Gregory learned the importance of empathy and communication, slowly earning back the trust he had lost. Months turned into a year, and the Gilded Fork continued to thrive. Its reputation as a beacon of inclusivity attracted patrons from all corners of society, from wealthy executives to families on tight budgets. Community events drew record crowds, and partnerships with local artists transformed the restaurant into a cultural landmark. Sarah's dream of creating a space where everyone felt welcome had become a reality. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting golden light across the dining room, Sarah stood near the entrance, watching as guests enjoyed themselves. Chef Elena approached her, holding 2 glasses of sparkling wine. "To us," she said, raising one glass. "And to everything we've built together. To us," Sarah echoed, clinking her glass against Elena's. As they sipped their drinks, Mia joined them, followed by Carlos and several other staff members. They laughed and reminisced about the challenges they had overcome, marveling at how far they'd come. In that moment, Sarah realized something profound. Success wasn't defined by accolades or financial gain. It was about building something meaningful, something that brought people together and made the world a little brighter. And as she looked around at the faces of her team, glowing with pride and camaraderie, she knew she had achieved exactly that. Far away, Gregory sat in a quiet cafe studying notes from his latest class. Though his journey was far from over, he felt hopeful about the future. He still thought about the Gilded Fork often, not with bitterness, but with gratitude for the lessons it had taught him. Life had a funny way of humbling even the proudest individuals, and Gregory was proof that change was always possible. As the city lights twinkled outside, both Sarah and Gregory reflected on their paths, the mistakes they had made, the lessons they had learned, and the opportunities they had seized. In different ways, they had discovered that true success came not from power or perfection, but from embracing imperfection, fostering connection, and striving to leave the world better than they found it. And so, the story of the Gilded Fork became more than just a tale of triumph. It became a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the transformative power of kindness.